Hello everybody, welcome to The Productive Attorney. My name is Jim Zeta, I'll be your host, and today we're going to be talking about basics of technology. As you all know, when I start The Productive Attorney, I usually start with a war story, something current, or something that is from the past that relates to the topic at hand. Right now, we just had, in my class, I teach at Texas A&M Law School, I teach law practice management. We just had 2 lectures on technology. One was what I did, and then one was done by a gentleman named Nick Bettinger, former president of the Tarrant County Bar Association. He's a defense attorney. He's was in charge of the COVID response for Tarrant County. Nick's a technology guru. So this is really first and foremost in my mind. And we both talked about, we're both 30 plus year lawyers. We've been practicing more than 30 years. We both talked about what it was like technology-wise when we started. When I started back in 1988, we didn't have computers in our offices. All we had was a telephone and a dictaphone. And a dictaphone was something where you would dictate what you wanted using a handheld device that was plugged into something that was the size of what we call a tape recorder now, a little bit beside the bread box. And inside of that was a cassette tape, a mini cassette tape. And you would dictate what you wanted on that cassette tape and then give it to somebody in either your legal assistant or somebody in the word processing departments. They had whole departments that did nothing but word processing. And they would have, they'd plug that cassette in, and they would use foot pedals to go back and forth while they talked about, while they heard you doing it and they were typing out what you were doing. I used to try and tell a few jokes while I was doing my dictation, and no one ever came to me and said, "Oh, those jokes are great," but no one ever came to me and said, "Stop doing them." So I don't know whether they even heard them or whether they worked or they just were like, "Come on, buddy, get on with it." The other thing that was interesting was back in 1988, the legal librarian was king or queen. You would go talk to him or her and they would be able to point you in the right direction. There was no computer research. There was no research at all. Keep in mind, in 1980, there was no internet. It was difficult to find information. When we had to do legal research on a case, we would get the topic that we were going to do the research on, and then we would have to go into the books. And there's a set of blue books that have the topics, and then from those blue books, you go into the cases, and you look at the physical books of the cases and you'd stack them one on top of the other and go make copies. And then you'd have to go into Shepard's to go ahead and review, through that. And oftentimes the Shepard's would be updated with pamphlets to make sure that the cases were up to date. And sometimes if you didn't have an answer as to whether or not a case was on appeal or not, because one or two of the Shepard pamphlets were missing, you would have to scour the office to find out which partner was hiding that in their office or just had it in their office. So that, and I always say partner because associates knew to bring them back. And we would have to go find those. So that's what technology was like back in 1988. As you know, now it is entirely different. You can drop a brief into Lexis or Westlaw and they can come up with all the cases that relate to the issues in that brief and give cases that are counter, give cases that this particular judge has decided. We've come a long, long way since 1988. So in our 2 lectures that we had, Nick and I have agreement on several topics. One of the topics we talked about was hardware that you should have. Really, if you're going to have a computer, I think the desktop, if you are at a desk, whether it's a home office or work, I think a desktop is better than a laptop for several reasons, but a desktop really seems to work. And Dell's seem to be what we're both in agreement on. There's an XPS and there's an Optiplex. You can also go with Apple. We talked about Apple and when it comes to software and how Microsoft kind of runs the world in the business world and in the legal world. And there are some particular programs that don't play well with Apple. And so there are law firms that are completely Apple law firms, and they function and they do well. But they've had to do, I think, some workarounds in order to make it work. So if you're stuck on Apple, you can do it. You can run a law firm on Apple. But Dell seems to be the market share right now. It's interestingly on word processing. When I started, WordPerfect was by far the king of the world, and it wasn't until probably the late 90s, early 2000s that Microsoft Word began to take over. And when it began to take over, WordPerfect has just kind of fallen away. Monitors. If you're at a desk you have one monitor, you're doing it wrong. You need to have at least two monitors. I always tell a joke. Two monitors make you 30% more efficient. Three monitors make you 0% more efficient. But I always think that two monitors is great. Nick is a believer of three monitors, and what Nick likes to do is take his monitor on the right and turn it from landscape up to portrait. So he flips it so that it is longer than it is wide. And that is the way a normal piece of paper looks like. That's a good way to do emails. And when he first started telling us about going to three monitors, he had one that had gone to portrait. He now has two going to portrait. Both of mine are in landscape. That's probably just the way I'm used to. But those are the issues on monitors. Printers. Printers are generally fungible. You can really get a bunch of different kinds of printers. But my experience is HP, Hewlett Packard, has the best. You want one that can feed envelopes and that can print checks for you. Wireless mouse and keyboard. I think with any kind of camera, wireless mouse, keyboard, Logitech is the way to go. If you're going to have a scanner on your desk, and I think 5 years ago it was critical, I still think it's really important because any piece of paper that comes across you want to scan. There's nothing else but Fujitsu, Fugitsu, ScanSnap. That's it. I have bought one for everyone in the office, and Nick has bought one for everybody in his office. If you're going to get a big scanner and a big copier, we use Sharp. I think they do a good job. You have to have a shredder. Get one that's reliable. These things break down, but you can know a particular brand that makes sense. If you're going to be doing any administrative work, get a check scanner. I have a check scanner in my office, and it saves me from going to the bank almost every day. It's extremely helpful. Then you have to think about backup, and how are you going to do backup? Since we had servers, we do backup on servers here, and we also backup in the cloud. If you want to do what I call a dirty backup, and that's just a backup of like essential personal things and some real essential documents, you can put those on Dropbox. Some people have some security issues with Dropbox. I don't. Nick does. So that's an issue that's out there, and you have to back up your materials. So that's kind of your basic hardware, but there's some mobile hardware that you need to have. Of course, everybody has a phone, and so everybody has that mobile hardware. The question is whether you have a tablet or not. Nick has a Surface because he's a Microsoft guy. I have an iPad because I'm an Apple guy. We both use those quite a bit. And then a laptop. If you're going to go to trial, a laptop, or you're a criminal attorney whose all the records are on computerized, as in Tarrant County, that's the way it is, and you need to have a laptop. I do not have one. I think the iPad does everything I want. A watch, and in my case, an Apple Watch. I think that's really important. One of the main things I like about the watch is until I had my watch, I would not know if I was trying to be contacted when I was in a deposition or when I was in court. And obviously, you would only get contacted or you want to know if it's an emergency or not. And you can get notifications on your watch, and you can just glance at your watch like you're looking to see what time it is, and it can give you the notification. Maybe there's a family emergency that you need to take care of. Maybe there's an emergency at work that you need to stop the deposition. But it's always nice to be able to notify immediately of an issue by people that need to get in touch with you. Hard drives and flash drives to do your own backup. I believe in those. Nick believes in those. Flash drives can be the USB drives. A projector is nice. Most courtrooms have projectors. There's other places that have projectors. I've had one for years, and I don't use it very much. Really, my kids used it to show games up on the wall, but that's about it. And then if you're going to do litigation and you want to do videos, you can do videos yourself, video depositions. You can get yourself a video camera and microphones and a tripod. So the idea with all of this hardware is to make your life easier, not harder, and so that you can get access to everything, anywhere, anytime. So once you get past hardware, you have to figure about software. And what is it that computer programs that you want to use as an attorney? And there are three universes. there's the Microsoft universe. You're talking about Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. That's the most used. That's the most easily transferable among people. If you have a PowerPoint, you can send it to them. If you have an Excel spreadsheet, you can send it to them. Apple's out there. Apple's universe is out there. I use that. I use that for personal stuff. I sometimes use it as a crossover for work. I like their notes function. I like the fact that they all work together. The watch, the iPad, the iPhone all work together. I think it's less effective if you don't have an Apple-only law firm. It's difficult to transfer things kind of among and between. And speaking of difficulty transferring among and between, what I've struggled with is the Android Google world. And that is when someone sends me something on Google Drive and I'm in the Apple world and the Microsoft world and I get this Google stuff, they don't talk well together, and it's difficult for me and it's time consuming. But the Google Android world is becoming more out there, and you do need to know about it. All these three things you have to know something about, because different people use different programs, including your clients. So when we go to software, what software do you get? Well, clearly Microsoft Word. WordPerfect used to be out there. I used to talk about it 5-6 years ago. I barely talk about it now because it's dead. Microsoft Office 365 is mobile. It has obviously has your inbox and your email. You've got OneNote, Excel, PowerPoint. It's really good. Browsers. What kind of browser do you use? Some say Explorer. I think Explorer has too many security flaws since it's the most widely used. You also have Chrome, Firefox. Those are the browsers that I hear that most people use. Some people use Safari from Apple. That's the main browsers that are out there. You have Adobe Acrobat Pro, which you need to get. For PDFs, Adobe is by far the best. You don't want to go to Joe's PDF. It just doesn't have everything. Virus protection. Every computer you have should have virus protection. There's a million different programs out there. You research them, but I use Trend Micro, but there's also Malwarebytes. There's other ones out there that you can use. And then spam filters. And I do want to spend a second on spam because some people don't have it set up as well as they should. We've had a consulting firm set up our spam filtering. There is a spam filter at our server level when stuff comes into the law firm, and so a lot of the stuff that's junk gets caught there. Then when it comes, and it does happen to make it through to my program, I have a junk email, and I've set up rules that if any of these things should come in, then they should be transferred over to this junk email folder, which I look at every once in a while to make sure that something didn't accidentally get sent into junk. And then once it gets into my actual Microsoft Office 365, then there's times that I have a focus folder and an other folder. And really now it's gotten down to where if it gets into my focus folder, it is what I need. It is what I have to have. Also, what I'll do is about once every 3 months, I will go through when programs or emails start getting through, I'll unsubscribe for about a week. So anything I get comes in that looks bad, I unsubscribe. And that actually does work. I get less emails when I do that have gotten through some of the filters. Once an email comes in, I have a very simple program add-on to Microsoft Microsoft email, and it's called SimplyTech. It's called SimplyFile by Hitech, HITECH, SimplyFile by Hitech. And SimplyFile, all it does is it predicts the folder that your email should go in. So I have a folder set up for almost all my cases, and those folders actually link to my program, my case management software, and I'll talk about that when I talk about case management software. But when I go ahead and I open an email, this program up in the ribbon at the top automatically predicts where this email should go. And it gets it right about 80% of the time. So I get a case in the Smith file or an email in the Smith file, and I look on the ribbon and it says in there Smith file. So I just open the email and then click on that Smith file button up at the top, and it automatically goes to that folder. And I know that when my staff didn't have it and I started giving it to them, they used it, and then when they got new computers, they couldn't get it up to on the new computer, and so they would contact me and say, Jim, what was that program again? It was really effective and I need to make it work. So Simply File, excellent program for some of your software. So now we come down to, and I will just touch on these, but I'm going to do a whole deal on it, a whole podcast on it. What are the practice management software programs? So what is a practice management software program? Well, that is what organizes your law firm. And so what it does is it has contacts, it has a matter. So there's the cases of the files that you have. The contacts are your clients, opposing counsel. For marketing, it's your potential new clients. And then there's events. That's obviously on your calendar as your meetings, if you're doing litigation, depositions, hearings, trials. You have to-dos, and those are your deadlines and your follow-ups and your daily tasks. Obviously, you have your calendar. When you look at your calendar, you look at it daily, weekly, monthly? I like the monthly view. Some people like the weekly view, but that's how you can have your calendar set up. And then, of course, case management software should do billing. And when I say billing, it means you can bill to the file, but the other thing is the accounting function of case management software. So, for example, does it tell you what your balance is in your operating account, what your balance is in your trust account? Do you write checks out of your case management software? So if you have a bill to pay, can you pay it through your case management software, or do you have to go to a third-party vendor such as QuickBooks? I'm a big believer, and I've had bad experience with accounting software, specifically with billing matters when I was with Time Matters, that I really want a robust accounting part of my case management software, something that works really well, that is not a third party through QuickBooks. There are some case management softwares that link really well with QuickBooks, but it's always to me a little clunky that you have to go to another piece of software. So I looked for years and I've actually found one, which I'll talk about at the very end. So what are the practice management programs that are out there right now? It was when I started 4 or 5 years ago, this was an area that was wide open for consolidation. There were many different types of programs competing for market space in this, and there really wasn't a clear leader. There has been now a clear leader, and that is Clio, CLIO. Clio is a web-based case management software. It is pretty basic. It does work with a lot of third-party vendors, including QuickBooks. It started at the same time as a program called Rocket Matters. And so Rocket Matters and Clio started. They were the first web-based case management softwares that got any traction. And for a while, you didn't know which was going to come out on top. But Clio has clearly won. Rocket Matters has kind of gone to the side. Another big one is Practice Panther. That seems to be a real popular program right now. My Case is another really popular program. Those three seem to be coming to the head of the list, and then you have others like Cosmolex and some others that are out there that are good programs. They do a good job, but these three seem to have come to the top, and Clio, Practice Panther, and My Case are the ones that you want to look at. I do want to give a word about Time Matters and kind of a warning about this Time Matters program. Time Matters is something that I used beginning in 2002. It is server-based, which means that it is not in the cloud. It is based on servers that are on site with you. So all of your data is on site. That makes it more secure, safer, and it just works through your server, which is great if there's no pandemic. But if there's a pandemic and you need to access your program, then you're having to dial in to the law firm and look at a virtual part of your screen, and it is clunky and slower and not as strong as a web-based program. Nonetheless, Time Matters in 2002, 2003 was cutting edge, and I got that program and I customized it. And I also got Billing Matters, which was the accounting portion of it. And what ended up happening was we discovered that the hard way, that there was some coding errors, that there was some actual writing of the program that made it so that one particular function that we happen to use a lot wasn't accurate. And so I spent $50,000 tracking down this problem, and there really was no solution for it. Eventually in 2008, Time Matters sold to Lexus, and when that happened, all the steam ran out of Time Matters, in my opinion. Time Matters was it was going to try and go web-based. It never did. It was going to try to do some other things. It never did. And it's slowly but surely dying. And Nick agreed with me that it's in really bad shape. So in 2017 and 18, my consultant, IT consultant, Nancy Griffin from 3545, she is amazing. She's worked with me from the very beginning. She came to me and finally said, I have the case management program that you want, the software that you want. It's called Centerbase, Centerbase. It's a programmable web-based program, but the most important thing for me at the time was it did all the functions well, but it had an integrated, robust accounting package that had been tested for years and worked. So I converted. Anytime you convert from one case management software to another, it is extremely painful. But I converted, and when we did the conversion, it worked. We got trained on it. That's the one thing I would say when you get case management software: spend the time and the money to train. It is not billable. It doesn't make any money. It takes your staff away and you away from your work. And it is a pain in the ass, but it is one time. You only have to train one time, and when your staff learns it and becomes proficient in the program, it is multiples of how much time it ultimately saves you. So spend the time and money on training, and that's what we did with Centerbase, and now it is our program. It works for us. We have customized it. 3545 did a Vulcan mind meld with me to get all my thoughts out on how we run cases, and we were able to create systems within Centerbase and forms and just different tracking of the tasks that we take, so that now they're automatic. And so from the time we get a potential new client coming in all the way to the end of settlement, we have different types of paths in which I guess I can't remember the word that I'm looking for, but we call them workspaces, and I'll remember. But we have these different paths that we use, and they automatically create forms and automatically create reminders, and it's worked really well for us. The problem is you can mind meld and give them all the information, and you have all the deadlines, but deadlines change. Here in Texas, we have affidavits we have to file, and it used to be we had to file those 30 days before trial. Now we have to file them 90 days after the defendant's answer. Well, when you've already programmed it to 30 days before trial, you've got to go in and change the coding of all this work that you've done. So that makes it a little bit challenging, but I'm really glad that we've done it. So those are some real basics on technology. We'll go into it much deeper, but I just wanted to give you that. Thank you for listening to The Productive Attorney. And if you want to see what we're up to, go to theproductiveattorney.com. Thanks. Bye.